I'll never forget the day my life fell apart, the day my world was turned upside down by the one person I never saw coming. It was supposed to be a normal Saturday afternoon, just me and my girlfriend of 3 years, Emily, enjoying a lazy brunch at our favorite cafe. But as we sat sipping our coffee and laughing together, I received a call that would change everything. My sister, who had been fighting cancer for years, called me in tears, her voice shaking with desperation. She told me that the doctors had given up on her, that there was nothing more they could do to save her. I felt like my world was crumbling around me, but I tried to stay strong for Emily's sake, to be the rock she needed. But as we hugged each other tightly, trying to process this devastating news, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. That was when I saw him, a tall, dark-haired stranger who had been sitting across from us just moments before, watching our exchange with an unnerving intensity. He stood up, his eyes locked on me, and whispered a single word in my ear: "Run." As I turned to Emily, confused and worried, the stranger vanished into thin air, leaving us both stunned and disbelieving. What was going on? Who was this mysterious figure, and why had he just saved my life? But before I could even process these questions, Emily's expression changed from shock to horror. She grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with fear, and pulled me away from the table. "Don't go anywhere," she whispered urgently. "We need to get out of here." And that's when it hit me we weren't alone. The stranger was still watching us, his eyes fixed on Emily like a predator stalking its prey. I felt a chill run down my spine as he stepped back into the cafe, his presence growing more menacing by the second. What had just happened? Who was this man? And what did he want from me? As we hastily paid our bill and left the cafe, Emily's grip on my arm tightened. "What's going on?" I asked her, my voice low and urgent, but she just shook her head, her eyes darting around us like she was searching for something or someone. We walked in silence for several blocks, the tension between us growing thicker with every step. It wasn't until we reached Emily's apartment building that she finally spoke up. "You don't remember him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you?" I felt a jolt of confusion. What did she mean? And then it hit me. The memories came flooding back like a tidal wave. The stranger was a figure from my past, someone I thought I'd left behind forever. But now, here he was, and he had just changed everything. As we stood in front of Emily's apartment door, I knew that our lives would never be the same again. The stranger's presence had set off a chain reaction, unraveling threads that I thought were long since severed. And yet, despite my fear and uncertainty, there was something about him that drew me in, something that made me feel alive again. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. But as I turned to Emily, her eyes met mine with a warning. "Be careful," she said, her voice laced with a mixture of fear and determination. And then she was gone, vanishing into the apartment like a ghost. I was left standing alone, facing the stranger who had just stolen my heart, and I had no idea what he wanted from me. As I pushed open the door and stepped inside, I felt a sense of trepidation wash over me. The air was thick with tension, and I could sense that Emily's absence had created a power vacuum, one that the stranger was determined to fill. He stood in front of me, his eyes blazing with intensity, and whispered a single word: "Mine." And then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on Emily's couch, her face etched with worry above me. She had been calling my name for what felt like hours, her voice laced with panic. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness washed over me, forcing me back onto the cushions. "What happened?" I croaked, my throat dry and scratchy. Emily's expression was a mix of relief and fear. "You fainted," she said, helping me sit up. "The stranger gave you something to drink, and then, I don't know, it just took you." She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for answers. I watched her, trying to piece together the events of the past few minutes. The stranger's face was etched in my mind, his piercing blue eyes, his chiseled jawline, his dark hair that seemed to ripple with an inner intensity. As Emily helped me to my feet, I felt a sense of disorientation wash over me. Who was this man, and what did he want from me? Why had he given me something to drink that made me faint? And why did I feel like I knew him, like we'd shared secrets and laughter together in another lifetime? The questions swirled in my mind as Emily led me to the kitchen, where a cup of water waited for me. As I sipped the cool liquid, I felt a sense of clarity begin to return. But just as I was starting to piece things together, the stranger reappeared. He stood in the doorway, his eyes locked on mine with an unnerving intensity. "You're awake," he said, his voice low and husky. "Good." Emily stepped forward, her hand grasping my arm like a lifeline. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice firm but controlled. The stranger's gaze flicked to Emily, his eyes narrowing slightly before returning to me. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay," he said, his tone dripping with insincerity. I felt a surge of distrust. Who was this man, and what did he really want from us? But as I looked into his eyes, I saw something there that gave me pause, a glimmer of sadness, perhaps, or a hint of vulnerability. It was almost human. "You're not going anywhere," Emily said, her voice firm but controlled. "You've done enough damage." The stranger's gaze flicked to Emily again, this time with a hint of surprise. But then his expression expression hardened, and he spoke in a low, menacing tone. "I'm afraid I have no choice," he said. And with that, he turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving me feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. As Emily turned to me, her eyes wide with concern, I felt a sense of trepidation wash over me. What had just happened? Who was this man? And what did he want from us? And why did I feel like my heart was racing with anticipation, like I was waiting for something that would change everything? As the stranger walked out of the apartment, I felt a sense of unease settle in. Emily's grip on my arm tightened, her eyes never leaving the door behind him. "What just happened?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head, trying to clear the cobwebs. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think we need to get out of here." Emily nodded in agreement, and together we gathered our things and left the apartment. As we walked down the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Still, the sensation persisted. We walked for several blocks, trying to put some distance between us and the stranger's departure. But no matter how far we went, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still following us. It wasn't until we reached a small cafe on the outskirts of town that I finally felt safe enough to stop and gather my thoughts. As we sat at a table by the window, sipping coffee and trying to process what had just happened, I noticed something strange. The stranger's face kept flickering into my mind, his piercing blue eyes, his chiseled jawline, his dark hair that seemed to ripple with an inner intensity. But it was more than just his physical appearance that I couldn't get out of my head. It was the sense of familiarity that came with him, a feeling that I'd known this man before, even though I knew I never had. It was a feeling that left me feeling unsettled and uneasy. "What do you think he wants from us?" Emily asked, breaking into my thoughts. I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think we need to be careful." As if on cue, the door to the cafe swung open and the stranger walked in. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on us, and then he made his way over. My heart sank as he approached our table, but Emily stood tall, her eyes flashing with defiance. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice firm. The stranger smiled, a slow, seductive smile that sent shivers down my spine. "I just wanted to make sure you two are safe," he said. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment I felt like I was drowning in their depth. "I'm afraid we're not your responsibility," Emily said, her voice firm but controlled. The stranger's smile never wavered, but his eyes seemed to flash with anger. "We'll see about that," he said, turning to leave. As he walked out of the cafe, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. As we watched him disappear into the crowd, Emily turned to me with a look of concern. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. And as I looked at her, I realized that I didn't have an answer. As we sat in the cafe, trying to make sense of what had just happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched again. I glanced around, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Still, the sensation persisted. "I don't like this," Emily said, her voice low and worried. "We need to get out of here." I nodded in agreement, and we quickly paid our bill and left the cafe. As we walked down the street, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The stranger's presence still lingered in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching us. I glanced around, trying to catch a glimpse of him, but there was no one. We eventually found ourselves at Emily's apartment, where we collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. As we caught our breath, I turned to Emily and asked, "Do you know anything about this stranger?" Emily shook her head. "No, I don't," she said, "but I do know that he's not from around here." She frowned, thinking back. "I saw him at the bar last night. He was talking to someone, but I didn't recognize them." I sat up straighter, my heart racing with excitement. "Do you think it's related?" I asked. Emily nodded. "I don't know, but I have a feeling that it is." We sat in silence for a moment, thinking about what we knew and what we didn't know. As the hours passed, our conversation turned to more mundane topics, our jobs, our friends, our families. But every now and then, I would catch Emily's eye and see a flicker of fear there. She was scared, and she didn't know why. I tried to reassure her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. The stranger's presence still lingered in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were in over our heads. As the night wore on, the silence between us grew thicker until it felt like a physical presence. We were both thinking about the stranger, wondering what he wanted and why he was so determined to find us. And then, just as we were starting to relax, Emily spoke up again. "I think I know who he is," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to her, my eyes locked on hers. "Who?" I asked, my voice low and urgent. Emily hesitated, like she was afraid of what she might say next. And then, in a voice that sent shivers down my spine, she said the words, "He's someone from your past." My mind went blank as I stared at Emily, trying to process her words. Who was this stranger, and how did he know me? I felt a wave of panic wash over me as I tried to remember if there had ever been someone in my past who matched his description. But the memories came flooding back, and I knew exactly who Emily was talking about. "Alex," I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily's eyes locked onto mine, mine, and I saw a mix of fear and understanding there. "Who is Alex?" she asked, her voice soft but insistent. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down as I told Emily the story of how I met Alex. It was a story I had never shared with anyone before, not even with my closest friends and family. But something about Emily's eyes made me trust her, and I knew that she needed to know. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound being the hum of the air conditioner in the background. Then Emily spoke up again. "You're saying that Alex is someone from your past, but you don't remember him?" she asked, her voice laced with skepticism. I shook my head. "That's right," I said, "but I do know that he was involved in something bad." Emily's eyes widened as she realized the implications of what I was saying. "What did you get involved in?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal, but something about Emily's face made me trust her completely, and I knew that I had to tell her everything. "It was a business deal," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "A bad one, and Alex was the one who set it all up." Emily's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw a flash of fear there. "What kind of business deal?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. I took another deep breath before answering. It was human trafficking," I said, my words feeling like a betrayal even to myself. The room fell silent as Emily processed what I had just told her, and then, without saying a word, she stood up and walked away from the couch, leaving me sitting alone in the darkness. I didn't blame her. I would have run too if I were in her shoes. But as I sat there, feeling like my world was crumbling around me, I knew that I had to find out more about Alex and what he wanted, and I knew that Emily was right. We needed to be careful.